Focus on Health, your weekly dose of health and wealth information on KUTV.
In the Western world, like in US, all children are screened at birth for sickle cell anemia, sickle cell disease. So it is our hope and our aim to have a policy where we screen all children at birth for sickle cell disease. And if once we do that, then we'll be able to identify the patients who need urgent follow-up so that we can maintain that follow-up. Because like I have said, sickle cell disease is a disease which has very, very severe consequences. And our aim is to try and prolong life, a good life, for as long as possible. At the moment, we are losing a lot of these patients because we don't screen them early. So we should try to screen them at birth. Sickle cell is purely genetic. In fact, sickle cell was the first disease which was identified, which was the first molecular disease to be identified. And this was many years ago before the current advances. So it is purely genetic, and the only thing we can do is to prevent it by genetic counseling. That's the only way. And once we have diagnosed the child, to manage that child to adulthood as best way as we can, under the difficult conditions, and to make sure that these children get a normal, as much as normal, a life as they are able to. Because currently, a number of these children will hardly live up to the age of 30 years. And managed very well, some of them will live up to the age of 40, 45 years. And there are advances in management of this condition, which we need also to let the patients be aware. One is we very much want to prevent infection. So many of these children are put on malaria prophylaxis, and also they are put on penicillin prophylaxis, and also they get pneumococcal vaccinations so that they can prevent these infections taking place. And then two, if it's in a very advanced setup, we can do stem marrow transplant. But remember, stem bone marrow transplant has its own constraints. And one of the constraints is that this patient permanently has to go into drugs to prohibit graft rejection. So they can also develop graft rejection disease. But bone marrow transplant, stem marrow transplant, is at the moment the only way in which you can absolutely cure this disease. But it has its own constraints which we need to bear in mind. Then the other one, which is a major advance nowadays, we can actually nowadays play around with a gene which is involved in that pathway. And by playing around that gene and modifying it, we can actually reduce the symptoms and the attacks. And these are the advances which are there in the Western world. Now, this is a hemoglobinopathy, so we need to study the hemoglobin. And the way in which you can, first of all, just by looking at taking a blood sample and preparing a blood smear and looking at it at a microscope, we can be able to say that there are sickle cells there. So that is the first thing which we can do. And this is possible. It can be done in nearly all the county hospitals. Then now there is the next stage, which is to do electrophoresis. Okay, so the electrophoresis is to identify the abnormal hemoglobin. So the patient now then needs a serum electrophoresis to identify the abnormal hemoglobin. And then now that's the definitive diagnostic investigation which we do for these children. And then after that, then treatment. And the treatment really is to treat the crisis. As I've explained to you, we have these children going to a crisis. And there are many types of crises, and each of them is related to the cells clumping together and what has precipitated those cells clumping together. And the things which can precipitate the cells clumping together is infections. They can precipitate the cells coming together. Any lack of oxygen for any reason can make the cells to clump together and create a crisis. Dehydration can lead to the cells clumping together. So for that reason, we then emphasize on the patient the importance of, let's say, making sure they're well hydrated, making sure they get vaccination for pneumococcal organisms, which can lead to this crisis, and making sure, apart from taking the vaccine, they take that medication. For example, in Western world, they give penicillin supplements, prophylaxis, to lower the infections. And in some situations also, we also can recommend giving antimalarials in some situations. This is people who are more knowledgeable on that can comment on that, because that's not an area where I'm an authority, so I will not comment on that one. Thanks. Sickle cell disease is being classified by WHO. It was classified as a WHO as a public health crisis, a disease of public health crisis concern. And in fact, a day was created, Sickle Cell Awareness Day, which is actually just the other day, 19th of June. And we have organizations which, during that period, patients who have got sickle cell disease come together and they are educated on that. And also we try our best to educate the citizens of this country on this condition and the importance of being screened, especially if you come to areas where this disease is very common, like at the coast, some areas of the coast, and in western region. So to be screened, and if you are found to be a carrier, mark you, if you are a carrier, you'll lead quite a normal life. You wouldn't know that you are a carrier of sickle cell disease. You'll only know if, for example, you get screened and it is found that you're carrying the gene for the carrier. And we try very much to counsel couples so that, if you are planning to have children, just get screened to find out whether both of you are carriers. Because if both of you are carriers, then the chances of your child being born with sickle cell disease is 25%. And 50% of those children will be carriers. And that is the only way we can try to cut down on the transmission of this non-communicable disease, which is genetic.
We've come to the end of our show today, and I'm sure you've learned a thing or two about sickle cell anemia. So let us create awareness on sickle cell anemia, not only on the 19th of June, which is the Sickle Cell Anemia Awareness Day, but also throughout the year. And let us also ensure that you go for screening, and if possible, as early as birth. I've been your host, Boari Michelle. Until next time, stay safe and stay healthy. I will leave you with the health you say. Focus on Health, your weekly dose of health and wealth information on KUTV.